Have you ever had one of those quiet evenings when the house feels a little too still? The television hums in the background, the clock ticks on the wall, and you realize you haven't really spoken to anyone all day. Maybe you've had moments where you wondered, is this it now? Is this what getting older feels like? If you have, you're not alone. Many people feel that way after 60 or 70. The kids are grown, friends move away, and routines get smaller. But I met a woman not long ago who changed the way I think about loneliness completely. Her name is Margaret. She's 75, lives alone, and yet she told me something that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "I never feel lonely." And the way she said it, calm, certain, and full of light, I believed her. So, of course, I asked her how. How does someone live by themselves at that age and never feel lonely? What she shared with me that day became one of the most powerful lessons I've ever learned about growing older, staying joyful, and keeping your heart full. And that's what I want to share with you in this video, the simple truths that keep loneliness far away, no matter your age or situation. You see, Margaret told me something that really stuck. Loneliness, she said, isn't about being alone. It's about forgetting how connected you really are. That line hit me hard. Because so many of us think we're lonely because we live by ourselves or don't see our family often. But what she meant was that loneliness starts when we stop feeling part of life. When you retire, the world suddenly gets quieter. There are fewer phone calls, fewer places to be. You are no longer surrounded by coworkers or the busy hum of family life. And if you're not careful, that quiet can start to feel like emptiness. But it doesn't have to. Margaret said the first secret to never feeling lonely was this: stay curious about people. Even though she lives alone, she's constantly connecting, not in big, flashy ways, but in small, human moments. She chats with the cashier at the grocery store. She remembers her neighbor's dog's name. She sends handwritten notes to friends, even ones she hasn't seen in years. Every person, she told me, is a story waiting to be heard. When you listen, you realize how full the world still is. And I think she's right. Loneliness shrinks when curiosity grows. When you approach people, even strangers, with warmth, they respond. You start to feel the web of connection that's been around you all along. You don't have to wait for family visits or holidays to feel loved. You can build small, beautiful bridges of connection every day. Margaret also told me that she never lets a day pass without doing something that reminds her she's useful. That's her second secret. Because loneliness often grows in the space where purpose used to live. When we stop feeling needed, we start to feel invisible. And invisibility, that's what really hurts the soul. Margaret volunteers once a week at the local library, shelving books. She says it's not about the work, it's about the feeling of being part of something that matters. On the days she isn't volunteering, she makes meals for the elderly couple down the street or knits scarves for children at a nearby shelter. It's not about grand gestures, she said. It's about remembering that someone out there needs a piece of your heart. That one hit home for me. Because when you think about it, being useful isn't just about helping others, it's about keeping your own spirit alive. It gives your days a rhythm, a reason to get up, a sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself. And when you feel that, loneliness loses its grip. The third thing Margaret shared made me smile because it's so simple, yet so powerful. Every morning, she talks to herself, out loud. Not in a silly way, but as a way of greeting the day. She'll say things like, "Good morning, Margaret. Let's make today a good one," or "You're doing just fine, my dear." It's her way of being her own best friend. Now, I know that might sound strange at first, but think about it. We spend so much of our lives listening to our own thoughts, but rarely do we speak to ourselves with kindness. We're often our own harshest critics. Margaret decided a long time ago that she wouldn't let that voice be her enemy. She said, "If I'm going to spend the rest of my life with me, I might as well enjoy the company." That kind of self-compassion is powerful. It turns solitude into something peaceful instead of painful. When you treat yourself with kindness, being alone stops feeling like punishment, it starts feeling like rest. You realize you can enjoy your own company, just as you would enjoy sitting quietly with an old friend. And here's something interesting. Studies show that the way we talk to ourselves affects our emotional health just as much as the way others talk to us. So if you spend your mornings with a gentle word and a smile, your brain actually starts to believe you're surrounded by warmth and love, even when no one else is in the room. Margaret's life is full, not because she's constantly surrounded by people, but because she's constantly surrounded by meaning. She connects. She gives. She speaks kindly to herself. And all of that creates an invisible circle of love around her, one that keeps loneliness on the outside. It made me realize that loneliness isn't something we have to accept as part of aging. It's not inevitable. It's just a signal, a gentle nudge from life saying, hey, it's time to reconnect. Whether that's with others, with a cause, or simply with ourselves. Now that we've talked about curiosity, purpose, and self-kindness, let's explore one more piece of Margaret's story. The part that truly ties it all together and shows how she keeps her spirit alive even on the quietest days. If you're still watching and feel that these insights are meaningful, please type number 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I warmly invite you to do so, and don't forget to turn on the bell, so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos designed to uplift, inform, and inspire. Your support truly means a lot. It's what keeps us going and allows us to continue sharing thoughtful, helpful content just for you. Now, let's continue this journey together. When Margaret and I talked that afternoon, there was something about her presence that I couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't just that she was cheerful or kind, it was the quiet confidence she carried, the way she seemed perfectly at peace with herself. So I asked her, Margaret, what do you do on those days when the world feels heavy or when you miss someone deeply? She smiled, took a sip of her tea, and said softly, oh, I have those days too. But I've learned not to fight them. I let them come, I sit with them, and then I remind myself, feelings are visitors. They don't stay forever. That, she told me, was her fourth secret. She embraces solitude instead of fearing it. She said, most people think loneliness and solitude are the same thing, but they're not. Loneliness is the ache of feeling disconnected. Solitude is the art of enjoying your own presence. And the more she talked, the more it made sense. So many of us have been taught that being alone is something to avoid, something that means we're unwanted or forgotten. But Margaret sees it differently. She said solitude is where she finds her peace. It's where she listens to her thoughts, prays, and reflects. I used to fill every quiet moment with noise, she said. Music, television, phone calls, anything to keep me from hearing my own heart. But once I stopped running from the silence, I realized it wasn't empty at all. It was full of wisdom, memories, and calm. That line stuck with me. Because it's true, when you stop fearing your own company, life becomes softer. The silence that once felt cold becomes a kind of comfort. Margaret says she lights a candle every evening, just before sunset. She makes herself a cup of tea, sits by the window, and watches the sky change colors. That's my conversation with life, she said. It reminds me that endings can be beautiful too. There's something so sacred about that ritual. It made me realize that sometimes, the way to stop feeling lonely isn't to add more people or distractions, it's to deepen your relationship with yourself and the world around you. The breeze, the trees, the sound of rain, they're all forms of connection too, if you pay attention. And that brought Margaret to her fifth secret, which she called the daily act of gratitude. Every morning, before she even gets out of bed, she names 3 things she's grateful for. Sometimes it's big things, like her health or her children's happiness. Other times, it's something as small as the smell of her morning coffee or the softness of her favorite blanket. It's impossible to feel lonely when you're counting blessings, she said with a smile. Because gratitude reminds you that you're part of something much bigger. It's a simple practice, but it changes everything. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's present. It gently teaches your heart to see abundance instead of emptiness. And the more you practice it, the more your brain begins to notice the good that was always there, the warmth in a stranger's smile, the comfort of your home, the sound of birds in the morning. I remember her saying, "People often wait for joy to show up, but joy's already here. You just have to look for it." That perspective doesn't just fight loneliness, it transforms it. It turns ordinary days into something sacred, something worth waking up for. Margaret's next insight came when she started talking about friendship. But not in the way most of us think about it. She said, "At my age, many of the friends I grew up with are gone now. And that used to make me terribly sad. But then I realized, friendship doesn't end, it just changes shape." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "The memories I have of them, the laughter, the kindness, the lessons, those are still alive in me. I talk to them sometimes, not out loud, but in my heart. I thank them. And I keep their spirit alive by being to others what they were to me." That hit me deeply. Because so often, when we lose people, we think we've lost the connection too. But Margaret reminded me that love doesn't disappear, it simply moves into a quieter room. You can still visit it whenever you want. She also said she keeps making new friends, even now. "You're never too old to add another soul to your circle," she laughed. She told me about a woman she met at a community gardening group. They were both trying to figure out how to grow tomatoes, and by the end of the day, they'd exchanged numbers. Now they have lunch every other Thursday. "Sometimes," she said, "all it takes is a smile or a hello to change a week." And she's right. Friendship after 70 doesn't have to look like it did when we were younger. It's not about big gatherings or long phone calls. It's about little connections that remind us we belong. A friendly chat with a neighbor, a wave across the street, a shared joke at the market, those moments weave an invisible net of community around us. Margaret said something beautiful: when you give warmth, it comes back to you multiplied. It's a quiet truth that we often forget. The more kindness you offer the world, the less room loneliness has to live inside you. What I noticed about Margaret is that her life isn't filled with busyness, it's filled with intentionality. Everything she does, from her morning gratitude to her quiet evenings, is done with presence. She doesn't try to fill the space, she honors it. That's when it hit me, maybe loneliness isn't something to get rid of. Maybe it's something to understand. A gentle reminder that we're meant to stay connected, to others, to life, to ourselves. Margaret told me that every time she feels a little wave of loneliness come over her, she doesn't panic. Instead, she treats it like an old friend showing up for tea. "I ask it what it needs to tell me," she said. "Sometimes it's telling me to call someone. Sometimes it's telling me to get outside. And sometimes it's just asking for a little stillness." That level of peace doesn't come overnight. It comes from years of choosing love over fear, gratitude over scarcity, connection over isolation. And that, I think, is what makes her so special. She doesn't fight the quiet. She fills it with life. Now that we've seen how Margaret transforms solitude and gratitude into joy, let's take one final step to understand how she keeps her spirit youthful, hopeful, and full of love even as the years go by. As our conversation was winding down, the late afternoon sunlight spilled gently through Margaret's kitchen window. The room felt warm, peaceful, like time itself had slowed to listen. She sat quietly for a moment, then looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You know," she began, "I don't think people get lonely because they're alone. I think they get lonely because they stop growing." That one sentence carried the kind of wisdom that only comes from a life well lived. Margaret believes that the heart, just like the body, needs movement, not the kind you do with your legs, but the kind you do with your spirit. She said, when you stop learning, stop dreaming, stop trying new things, that's when you start to fade. So I asked her what she does to keep her spirit growing at 75. She laughed softly and said, "Oh, I'm always learning something. I just learned how to make homemade bread last month. And now I'm taking an online photography class. My pictures aren't very good yet, but I don't care, I love it." She said that learning keeps her excited for tomorrow. It reminds me I'm still part of this world, still curious, still becoming. That word, becoming, is what struck me most. We often think that by the time we reach our 70s, the story is written. But Margaret doesn't see it that way. She said, "Every day I wake up, I'm still becoming the woman I'm meant to be. It made me think about how so many people slow down after retirement because they believe their best years are behind them. But Margaret proves the opposite. Your best years are the ones where you're still curious, still open, still brave enough to try. She also said something that touched me deeply. I don't spend much time worrying about the past or the future anymore. The past is full of lessons, and the future is full of mystery. But the present is where I actually live. So I make sure it's a good place to be. That's her secret to joy, right there, presence. She's not haunted by regrets or anxieties. She's here, now, fully alive in the moment she's in. She told me that when she washes dishes, she listens to the sound of the water. When she eats, she really tastes her food. When she walks, she notices the trees, the sky, the laughter of children in the park. Those are the moments that remind me I belong to life, she said. And when you belong to life, you can't really be lonely. There was such beauty in that, the idea that belonging isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you claim for yourself. You belong because you breathe, because you notice, because you care. As we kept talking, she told me that she doesn't chase happiness anymore, she cultivates it. Happiness isn't something you find, she said. It's something you grow inside you, day by day. For her, that means tending to her inner garden, feeding it with laughter, kindness, and patience. She said she makes a point to find humor in her days. If I spill my coffee, I laugh. If I forget where I put my glasses, I laugh harder. Life's too short to take myself so seriously. That lightness, that ability to laugh even in small frustrations, it's what gives her spirit that glow. And maybe that's another reason she never feels lonely. She knows how to create her own sunshine. Before I left her house that day, I asked her one last question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who feels lonely right now, what would it be? She thought for a moment, her eyes soft and full of kindness. Then she said, start where you are. Don't wait for someone to rescue you from loneliness. You have the power to fill your own life. Reach out, give, listen, create, learn. The world opens up when you do. And then she added something even more beautiful. You can't always control who comes into your life or who leaves. But you can always control how much love you bring into the world. And love, my dear, is never lonely. That stayed with me. Because what Margaret understands, what many of us forget, is that loneliness isn't an enemy. It's a teacher. It whispers, you still care. You still want connection. You still have more love to give. And that's something to celebrate, not fear. Her life, simple as it is, feels rich and full. Not because she's constantly surrounded by people, but because she's surrounded by purpose. She fills her days with gratitude, kindness, and curiosity, and in doing so, she fills her heart. It's a reminder that peace doesn't come from having everything or everyone you want. It comes from noticing what's already here and cherishing it. The smell of morning coffee. The warmth of sunlight through a window. A familiar song that brings back a memory. The quiet comfort of your own company. And maybe that's the real magic of growing older. You start to realize that joy isn't in the noise, it's in the stillness. It's not in the crowds, it's in the connection. And it's not in what you have, it's in what you notice. So if you're watching this right now and you've been feeling lonely, I hope Margaret's story reminds you of this. You are not alone. The world is still waiting for your smile, your wisdom, your presence. There are people out there who need what only you can give, your kindness, your laughter, your light. Reach out when you can, but also learn to enjoy the quiet in between. Fill your days with gratitude, your heart with curiosity, and your mind with new ideas. And remember, as Margaret said so simply and beautifully, you're never really alone when you enjoy your own company. So today, take one small step to fill your life with warmth. Maybe that means calling someone you've been thinking about. Maybe it means writing a letter, going for a walk, or simply sitting by the window and watching the sunset. Whatever it is, let it remind you that life is still happening all around you, and you are still a part of it. If this message touched your heart today, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what helps you stay connected, what keeps you from feeling lonely. And if you found comfort or inspiration here, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more gentle reminders that life is beautiful at every age. Here's to you, and to the peace that comes from knowing you are enough, just as you are. Here's to the love you give, the joy you grow, and the light that never leaves you, no matter how quiet life becomes. Because as Margaret reminded me that day, when you fill your heart with love, there's simply no room left for loneliness.